In 2017, the Nintendo Switch launched. One of its leading first titles was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, one of the most beautiful open-world Zelda games, and my personal favourite in the whole series. Its side quests were entertaining and kept me playing even after I'd beaten Ganon. Its story's freedom. You can complete the Divine Beast quests, get the Master Sword, and go beat Ganon that way, or if you wanted to, you could go up to Ganon with no clothes and just a tree branch. Those are the main reasons why I love Breath of the Wild, and I'm hoping that its sequel is going to reach the same level of enjoyment, if not become my new favourite game. Hi, my name is The Enhancer, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be going through everything we know about Breath of the Wild sequel. Sit back, relax, get yourself some bevvies, and let's get cracking. E3 2019 is our first look at Breath of the Wild sequel. Started off with a loud minuendo that's getting quieter for all you unmusical plebs, and a time-reversing sound effect along with some green symbols floating upward. We then get a shot of a corpse who we assume is Ganon due to the red hair and malice resonating from his body, in a cave with the green symbols we saw earlier rising up in a spiral to the cave surface. We then get a melody we hear throughout the whole trailer. Next shot, we get a torch held up to some cave paintings of who also seems to be Ganon due to the Gerudo markings on his clothes and his trident, leading who is probably the Gerudo. After this, we get a downward shot of Ganon's corpse with a chest wound where the green energy is coming out from. His chest wound is in the same place Ganon is stabbed at the end of Twilight Princess. It then cuts to Link and Zelda traversing through a cavern, their path illuminated by their torches and some strange crystals. To the side of them are some markings that resemble the same markings on ruins in Breath of the Wild belonging to the Zonai tribe. For those of you who don't know, the Zonai tribe is an ancient civilization that disappeared. We'll talk about this in the next trailer as well. Zelda is also riding some sort of mule-type animal that is carrying our two heroes' items. This could mean new mounts and hopefully more mounts that can be tamed and kept rather than just horses. I want to keep my bear, man. We then get a shot of a rat on some stairs, which is then engulfed by Malice. Shot of a bridge. Link and Zelda are trying to push their mule-type animal over the gap and failing. They most likely leave it behind and go on ahead by themselves. We then get more close-ups of the corpse, proving more it's Ganon by the markings on its cloak. The shots get a lot faster, so it's kind of hard to pick out details on the first time. We see a hand with the same energy of the markings from earlier, covering Ganon's chest wound. This hand seems to then be attaching itself to Link. Malice explodes upwards to the cavern's roof. Link and Zelda grab each other's hands as Zelda is falling, and in turn the strange energy hand catches Link. We see Ganon's corpse risen and emitting more malice from himself. The rocks start falling, including the one that Zelda is standing on, and then we assume that Zelda fell, and so did Ganon's corpse, which turns to look at her. Its eye sockets are filled with eyes of malice. To finish off, we get an above ground shot, all peaceful, quiet, no music. Then a dust cloud rises from Hyrule Castle, and it rises into the air. The trailer finishes with the sequel to Breath of the Wild is now in development, and the screen fades to black. This trailer's shots aren't in chronological order, so it's hard to tell what comes where in terms of the story. Essentially, the story goes, Link and Zelda are exploring a cavern underneath Hyrule Castle, where they find Ganon's corpse, which reanimates once they approach it, causing a cave-in and Link's right arm to be absorbed by the strange energy. You may be thinking, how was Ganon like this? I thought we killed him in the last game. That was Calamity Ganon, an embodiment of the being's rage, not the actual Ganon. The original game was lighter and more free with big open lands, but this trailer is darker and more claustrophobic, which makes me think this sequel is going to be darker than its original, which is no stranger to the Zelda series, with examples such as Majora's Mask following Ocarina of Time. This correlation was mentioned by Aonuma, who said, the new Breath of the Wild, or the sequel to it, it's not necessarily going to be related to Majora's Mask or inspired by it. What we showed you is currently a little darker. On June 15th, Nintendo performed their showcase containing many trailers, including the second trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, and this absolute troll. Moving on. The trailer starts off with a few flashes, always coming back to some rising malice though. The first flash is Malice flooding over Link's right arm. In his right arm, he is holding the Master Sword. Since we don't see the Master Sword for the rest of the trailer, we assume he dropped it whilst being attacked. The second is the corpse of Ganon we saw in the first trailer, his eyes filled with malice, showing that this is after his reanimation. Rising his arms lifted up like so. The final flash is Zelda actually falling. The screen then fades to black. This shows us that after the cave-in, when Zelda was left with Ganon's corpse, they most likely both fell. We get a Zelda Battle Royale. I'm just joking. We see Link falling from the sky, wearing quite Greek attire, part of it green, reminding me a little of the Audenwear Link has at the start of Twilight Princess. His hair is also more grown out, showing a time change between the first trailer and this shot. This Link also looks a lot more like the Link in the tapestry shown in Breath of the Wild also. Link's right arm also seems to be infected with something. Partially it looks mechanical and partially it looks rotting. A metaphor? Maybe. This change to his arm is probably to do with the energy hand seen in the first trailer. Next shot we get Link paragliding with a slightly different glider to that of the first game. It mostly looks the same, save for some streamers. Originally, the first game's paraglider was supposed to have streamers to show the wind's direction. The player may need to take wind into account when traveling, since it seems you'll be traveling from sky to sky island. This reminds me of Wind Waker, where you would have to change the wind using the Wind Waker, or if you got the Swift Sail, it would change automatically. There may be some ways of changing wind like these implemented into the sequel. Whether it will be the Wind Waker itself or something else, I can't say. In this shot, we get 3 floating islands. 4 if you include this one. 2 with trees and nothing else that I can pick out, and 1 massive monument off to the right. Link then runs on some grass and birds fly off, startled. Above him we can see a few floating islands, showing us that the islands are at different elevations also. This gives a certain difficulty to the game in terms of getting around the map, but when you're nearing the end of the game will most likely give you a tool that will make traversing easier, as Breath of the Wild did by giving us Rivali's Gale. In front of Link is a structure similar to that of a Japanese torii. These gates are found at Shinto shrines. They act as a symbol for the transition from the mundane to the sacred. Thank you, Zeltink. I never would have found that out without you. This means that these structures on these islands are most likely sacred, possibly being an indication for a shrine. You then get a shot of a rock-like creature that to me looks like a lizard and cat at the same time. This creature also has a symbol on its chest. From what I can see, it shows a broomstick or a paintbrush. Through its neck, you can see the energy powering it, which is the same energy as we keep seeing. The egg-like parts on its ears are the same as those of the structure behind it, which could be a shrine. The next shot we're going down to the ground, and Link is back to how we see him in the first trailer. His familiar clothing with a round shield, which most likely you can attain in Breath of the Wild, and a bow. He's still using the paraglider as seen in the shots above the clouds, but other than that I can't see any features transferred. Both his arms are covered by gloves, so it's not possible to tell if his right arm is infected like it was in the previous shots. Link is gliding past what seems to be a bokoblin outpost. The first main change people will see is the giant horns on top of the bokoblin's head. This could be a sign of a new difficulty, maybe replacing color from the last game, or adding on, or it could just be a new variation for the species. Other than that variation, you think, oh, it's just a normal outpost, then BAM! Out of the ground appears a stone talus, carrying the outpost. I think this looks really cool, and I hope it contains better loot than that of a normal outpost, because especially in a permadeath, I expect that it'll be a pain to beat. We then see the energy wrapping around Link's arm, proving what I said before. You'd think I would have mentioned this before, but the colour resembles that of the Triforce of Courage, which makes sense why it's going on Link's right arm, as that's where the Triforce within him resembles. We then get Link using his arm to use a different form of stasis that sends a spiky ball back to hit the enemies. The Moblin in this shot also has a different horn on its head. Link using his arm partially proves that Link's arm is going to act as the Sheikah Slate equivalent. The Sheikah Slate works more with Zelda as she earns the Triforce of Wisdom. The Slate probably fell with her, and that's why we don't see it at all in either trailers. We then see Link fighting a monster that's attached to the ceiling with a shield that is also a freaking flamethrower. You may know about the elemental weapons and arrows in Breath of the Wild. Are we going to get elemental shields as well? That sounds very pog. This creature has spores around it and partially reminds me of Deku Babas, except not as many teeth that I can see. It opens with a puddle dripping upwards. You heard me right, upwards. And then cuts to Link flying upwards in his attire that we keep seeing when he was in the sky. He bashes into the bottom of the island, but no, this does not stop him. Along with the familiar energy, he goes straight through the floor and pops up on top of it. To his right, we see another one of those could-be shrines with the egg-like structures. Whilst Link is diving upwards to the island, his right arm is glowing, making me believe this ability is controlled by his arm. Some reverse music starts playing like the first trailers. We also get a nice downward view of Hyrule. Below Link, we can see the trees of the Ceres Scablands. These trees resemble that of the Dragon Blood Tree. This area also features the Thunder Plateau, an area of obvious Zonai origin. Similarly to the first trailer, it ends with Hyrule Castle rising. This is much closer, so clearer to see it is rising and lasts a bit longer. A tower falls next to the tower that contains Zelda's study in Breath of the Wild, and lifting the castle seems to be the massive flood of Malice, pushing it up like a magma pushing off the top of a volcano. The castle does not seem to rise far, not as far as the cloud barrier anyway. We then get a release year, 2022. You know how the world of Breath of the Wild is extremely poggers? The best Zelda world, in my opinion. Well, the devs have said that they'll be reusing the map of Breath of the Wild in its sequel, as we've seen. Alnura mentioned, one of the reasons we wanted to create a continuation was because I wanted to revisit that Hyrule again, and use that world again, while incorporating new gameplay and new story. As we saw from the second trailer, the additions they're making is adding the sky, giving the game essentially two different worlds and two different ways of traversing them. Breath of the Wild's director, Hidemaru Fujibayashi, is still controlling this sequel's development. He's also directed Skyward Sword, but has been working on the Zelda games since the Oracle days. He was a director and planner for Capcom, and a sub-director and writer for Phantom Hourglass also. We don't know a lot about the development of the game, but what we do know is how it came about. In an interview with Kotaku, AJ Aonuma said, "When we released the DLC for Breath of the Wild, we realized that this was a great way to add more elements to the same world. But when it came down to technical things, is pretty much data. We're adding data to a pre-existing title. And so when we wanted to add bigger changes, DLC is not enough. And that's why we thought maybe a sequel would be a good fit. Initially, we were thinking of just DLC ideas, but then we had a lot of ideas and we said, this is too many ideas, let's just make one new game and start from scratch." We don't know what these DLC ideas were, but it's a good chance they were explorations of the origins of the Calamity and exploring above the cloud barrier. Aonuma also stated that there'd be DLC for the sequel also. I really like the idea of having DLC, or anything coming after the main game. People play the game longer and enjoy the game a lot deeper. Going forward, that's definitely something we'll think about. This game might also be inspired by RD2, as many of the younger devs are currently playing that game. The same as when Breath of the Wild was being made, Fujibayashi was playing Skyrim. Aonuma has also touched on the idea of a playable Zelda, or co-op, in interviews. He also mentions that in Breath of the Wild, you see the pair a lot. It's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because in Breath of the Wild, you see Zelda and Link often too. So to go straight into the thought of co-op is very interesting to me. He does not know why people think that this is happening, and that he can't reveal anything right now. There are theories that the reason for Zelda's new short haircuts is so that it resembles Link's. Their models are very similar, and would be easy to implement co-op for the two characters. I probably won't do co-op that much, as I don't really have anyone to play it with. On the 16th of June, IGN posted on Instagram that the reason Nintendo aren't releasing the title for Breath of the Wild sequel is because it gives away the story a bit, and obviously they want to keep it a secret. I respect their decision. Most likely, as I expect Nintendo will release the game at the end of the year to fit into Christmas, the title will be released in the middle of the year, to build up its hype for the end of the year, but this is just a theory on my part. Trian said in an interview, "As for why we're holding back on the name, you'll just have to stay tuned, because obviously Zelda names are kind of important. Those subtitles, they start to give little bits of hints about maybe what's going to happen. Past Zelda games prove this point, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, etc. I'd just like to take a second to thank the sources I used. All of them will be linked in the description. Nintendo's trailers, Zeltic and IGN. Zeltic and Mass Nintendo Bandit have posted a couple of videos on some theories. I recommend you check them out, or if you want me to do some videos on that, let me know. Most of you have most likely not seen a video like this on the channel, so you may be new to me doing this. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and a comment as this boosts the video out to people who need to know everything we know about Breath of the Wild sequel. I'd also appreciate if you subscribed. I'm on the road to 100 subscribers and I need you to help me to get it. Like I said, all sources are linked below, but a lot of analysis was also done by me. You're welcome. I put a lot of effort into this video, so please do share it. I'd appreciate it. If this video gets to 5 likes, I know, big goal, then I will do another Everything We Know video, maybe on Halo Infinite or Battlefield 2042, anything you guys want really. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.